What is your best ghost/paranormal experience story?
My brother's bedroom was next door to mine growing up. One afternoon he asked me what I was doing the previous night that made me laugh so much. Confused, I pressed him for details. About 3 a.m. last night, your laughter woke me up. It sounded like you were pacing your room, too. Pacing and laughing. At this point I told him that I wasn't home last night. I'd been at a friend's house. He went pale. To this day he swears blind that it was my laugh. I have a very distinct laugh, apparently.
Camping at a friend's family property with a group of friends. They had a huge dingy shop full of old tools and old furniture that was super creepy. Dirt floor, clown paintings in the loft, not even kidding. We stayed up late drinking by the fire and I was the last one awake. Went to go pee on the side of the shop and stood about 5 feet away looking inside through the window. There was a fluorescent light on and I noticed what looked like a piece of paper or dollar kind of floating around. I thought it was a moth at first, but it was moving in a very flowing figure 8 pattern that was very rhythmic. It reminded me of dangling a carrot. I watched it for maybe 20 seconds, which felt like forever. Then it quickly floated back to the corner of the shop where it was dark. There was also a wood chair near the corner that added to the creepiness. Could have been a moth though. I sat back down by the fire to finish my beer and have a smoke. No one else was awake, so I played Robot Unicorn Attack 2 on my phone for a while. I noticed my friend Mark pop out of his tent to pee, then go back in to go to sleep. I decided sleep sounded good, so I went to my tent and fell asleep. The next morning, we were having breakfast and Mark said, "I saw you guys sitting by the fire super late. How late did you stay up?" I told him I was probably 2 or 3 a.m. Then he said, "Who was up with you?" I told him I was the last man standing. He said, "I got up to pee and saw you on your phone and 2 people over your shoulder watching you play." He said one person looked bigger, so he thought it was one of our friends, who was a bigger dude. He said the other person was taller and skinny, but none of us are noticeably tall or skinny. Freaked me out. We still camp at that property once a year, but I don't go in the shop, and I go to sleep whenever my wife decides she's tired.
Ghosts just trying to figure out WTF you doing.
Ghosts be like, man, we died before this came out? We missed video games? Damn, they're lucky.
This is my brother's story, but it's a good one. He was working as a night porter at an old hotel from the 18th century in the northern English countryside. One night, a woman came down to reception as white as a sheet with her suitcase, saying she could not sleep and did not want to stay there. My brother inquired as to why. She said she could hear children laughing all night and a child had entered her room with a candle and was standing at the foot of the bed and wouldn't leave. My brother mentioned it to his manager the following morning and he was told that it is a regular occurrence. Before the hotel was a hotel, it used to be used as a school and kindergarten over 100 years ago.
When my middle child was about 2.5 to 3, we lived on an old house with a lot of poorly built self-done renovations done on it. There was an under-house storage area / workshop area accessible from one of the bedrooms. This workshop has a hatch door to the dirt under the house. Anyway, my daughter used to complain about the blue lady that lives under the house. We moved and never heard about it again.
Ever hear the harmonica at night? Maybe she meant Blue's lady smiling face with sunglasses.
A bit paranormal, perhaps? My grandfather got into the hospital on a Friday night. Nothing too unusual. He wasn't doing good, but he had been there before. The next day, I go to work. I'm somewhat worried, but again, he'd been there before. I go on with my day, there are customers, a friend stops by and we talk, and I fill the rest of the time with homework. My grandfather is in the back of my mind, but I have other stuff going on, you know? Right around 4 o'clock, I was chatting with a co-worker when I glanced at the clock and my stomach dropped. I randomly got filled with dread and profound sadness. I continue chatting, but the feeling persists. I check out at 5, the feeling of gloom persisting, and of course my brain goes to my grandfather. I just knew. I get home and my mother tells me my grandfather passed away. I ask around what time. 4 o'clock.
I had a similar experience with my aunt. Just a normal day at work, and then I get this overwhelming feeling of dread and anxiety out of nowhere. An hour later, I get a call from my mom letting me know that my aunt had been in a car crash an hour earlier and had died at the scene.
I had just started a new job. The building I worked in was really old, definitely pre-war. I had to stay a bit later than I normally would to get something done, and by the time I was packing up to leave, my floor was pretty empty. I needed to use the restroom before I left, so I walked over there, and as I approached the door I saw someone else open the door and go in. I remember vividly that they were wearing a pink shirt and khakis, because that's what I was wearing, too. I was also mildly annoyed, because I don't like being in the bathroom when someone else is in there. After deciding I still definitely needed to pee before the commute home, I entered the bathroom. But when I got in, it was completely empty. I don't know how to describe the energy in the room, but it was very tense. Completely silent. I remember being able to hear my heartbeat. After standing completely frozen for what felt like 10 minutes, it was probably like 15 seconds, I turned right around and left. I had nightmares about that bathroom for weeks. It seems so simple and uninteresting compared to a lot of other people's stories here, but it really shook me. There was something definitely off about the whole thing. Glad I work from home now.
A few years back, some friends and I were driving on some back roads in a patch of woods believed to be haunted. One of my friends was getting bored, so he rolled down his window and shouted, "Make something happen," or something along those lines. About 5 seconds after he rolls up the window, there is a strong, seemingly too well timed to be natural knock on the window closest to me. We've seen some weird shit in those woods, but nothing that couldn't be explained by shadows or animals. There is no explanation for that knock. Nothing was thrown at the car, we weren't moving, it sounded the way a knock made by a human hand sounds, etc. Actually, later on, we heard a very feminine shriek in those woods with no explanation either. So there's that.
Small but weird, I rented a room in a New England farmhouse, grad school. First night, about 2 in the morning, I had a very, very clear feeling I was being checked out by some sort of house spirits, but they approved. I went back to sleep. First time my girlfriend came over, she sat up in bed. I asked what's up, and it was almost word for word, something was checking her out, but there was no threat. A few weeks later my brother came over, next morning, unprompted. As he came downstairs he said he felt like something was checking him out at night, but it was okay. A new housemate, later, said the same thing as first morning. None of them knew each other, it was weird. TLDR, for guests in a New England farmhouse, said spirits checked them out the first night.
God, I want to know what happens when someone gets checked out but they're deemed not okay.
The spirit will firmly, yet in a friendly fashion, ask them to leave.
The house I grew up in was haunted. The way it was laid out, I could see from my bedroom down the hall and into the living room. My parents' bedroom door was on the other side of the living room, directly across from my door. Late at night I would hear someone pacing circles in the living room, but I was the only one awake in the house, and we didn't have pets. I never said anything because I didn't want the family to think I was nuts. Eventually I moved out and went to college. After I graduated I was in a rough spot financially. My parents had bought a new house, the old one was still empty, they were considering getting renters, and offered it to me to stay in for a while. I said no, I didn't want to move in. Mom asked why. I finally gave in and told her I thought there was a ghost. My mom froze and turned to look at me, and was like, "You hear her too?" Turns out she had also heard it for years and didn't say anything for the same reason.
When I was like 14, I was with a friend riding mountain bikes way out in the woods. We decided to turn back and go home for the day. We must have been 2 miles from any houses. Walking up the hill we just rode down from was this old guy with miner clothes from the 1800s carrying a bucket. He was walking up the hill with his back towards us. He was only for a few seconds and then he disappeared. We were both silent when I said I thought I saw something. He goes, "Yeah, me too." He perfectly described the guy. We got out of there very quick. This was in northern AZ where they used to gold mine. There was even this old miner's cabin about a mile from us.